All right, everybody, thank you and welcome to the Utah Apartment Association General Membership Meeting for July. First, I'd like to give a special welcome and thanks to our presenter tonight, Micah Travis, who is the Outreach Coordinator for Lead Safe Homes. And she will be doing a presentation in the middle today, but she is the one that you get to thank for the amazing sandwiches and cookies that we have in the back. So let's all give her a round of applause for that. Let's just talk about a couple of educational opportunities before we launch into tonight's topics. First, next month we are going to be discussing rental criteria, background checks, and how to market your apartment. This is a class that we've had requested several times. We're looking into getting a speaker. We'll see how that works, but we'll be talking about online marketing and other things quite a bit. We'll touch on marketing tonight. That's why we're having these two classes month back to back. But this should be a very exciting one, so I encourage you to attend if you can, or at least to view it online if you don't make it. If you haven't signed up for the cruise, you only have 2 weeks left before the bookings close for this. So the Utah Apartment Association is hosting a cruise for 7 days, starting on November 29th. It is a potential tax write-off as a business expense because it does include education for landlords. There will be, I think, 8 hours total of CE education available. If you're interested, talk to me after the class or contact us if I have time by phone. And we will be doing the drawing sometime in the next week for anyone who has referred a new member to the association who is a current member is automatically entered into a drawing to win a free cruise and free airfare to the cruise. So if you haven't referred anybody, your time is limited. You want to make sure you get them to sign up as soon as possible so that you meet the deadline for that drawing. I've mentioned before to this group our UPro classes. We have a series of 8 4-hour classes that cover in depth everything we can think to talk to you about how to run a rental property. The upcoming classes for that are July 9th, our legal regulations class in the evening, and then we have on the second Tuesday of every month a 6 p.m. class. It should be great. I'm sorry, it's not July 9th because that already happened. August 13th, Advanced Property Management and Investment. It's taught by Kent Nelson, a member of the association. It's great. We go over how to evaluate whether or not a rental property is a good investment when you're looking at it. If you're looking at buying a new one. Also about how to evaluate it if you're trying to sell or if you just want to understand the health of your rental investment. Is it worth what you're putting into it? So if you're interested in coming to that class, it's a 4-hour class. It's $59. It's a fantastic one. We highly recommend it. We also have the same series of classes on the third Friday morning of every month. The next one is Insurance and Liability coming up on the 21st. And we have all 8 of these classes scheduled regularly, and we alternate them. So if you want to come to both morning and evening ones, you can get them all out of the way. And once you've completed all 8 classes and taken a test, you become a UPro, Utah Professional Rental Operator. You get a PIN, a designation, special recognition, and we'll even be putting your picture up on the wall in this room. So if you're interested in this program, contact me, and I would love to walk you through it. It's as much training as we could possibly offer on the process of how to be a landlord. So we'd love to have you come. So here is our first topic for the evening. How many of you are more excited for this one or for the roofing? So let's raise your hand if you like this one. Who's for the roofing one? Okay, so let's see how interesting we can make both of them. I just like the graphic. That's why I like this one. First thing to do in order to speed up your turnover is to plan ahead. Okay? It's just incredibly important that you make plans as early as possible. First, on how to receive notices from your tenants. You want to teach them how the notice process works. So the state of Utah, the law is you have to have at least 15 days notice before the end of term in order to terminate the lease. Great. The industry standard is 30 days. So most leases are written somewhere between 15 and 30 days. Some of you may have longer than that. Does anybody have a 60-day termination notice requirement? Okay, no one in here, but I do know that some landlords do that. The important thing is that you educate your tenants early about how much notice they have to give you, what you're expecting out of them, and how the process works. Because a lot of tenants get confused. They think if they come to you July 15th and they give you 30 days notice, that means they get to leave August 15th and only pay a half month's rent in August. If you want to run it that way, that's fine, but that's not how the lease is written. The lease is written that they buy month chunks. So if they come to you on July 15th and say, I'm going to be out in August 15th, great, you gave me at least 30 days notice before the end of term, but you buy all of August. Now, if you re-rent the place before the end of August, of course, you'll refund them whatever portion of the rent, because you don't charge double rent ever. But they don't get to just choose to only buy half. You don't get to walk into Walmart and say, I only want half of a candy bar, right? It's the same process here. They buy it in chunks. So educate your tenants, let them know what you're expecting about them well in advance. The other thing is, know when their lease is expiring. If their lease is going to expire in 3 months, you might want to contact them and say, hey, what are you planning on doing? Just so you know, this is the process if you decide to give me notice. By the way, if you want to sign a new lease, these are all the incentives I have to offer. That's what we talked about last month. So if you missed last month's meeting, go online and watch the video, because we talked about how to increase tenant retention. That's the ideal here, is to get them to sign back up if they're a good tenant, right? If they're not a good tenant, or if they're going to be moving, you want to know as soon as possible so you can put things in place. Handling early termination. What if they come to you and they have 6 months left on their lease and they want to move? What do?
It's generally good riddance.
It's generally good riddance? Yeah, well, okay. So there's no legal thing you have to do. They've signed a commitment to you that they are going to rent for this period of time, and you've signed a commitment to them that you will allow them to live there for that period of time. It goes both ways. You can't break the lease early, and they can't break the lease early unless you come to a mutual agreement. In which case, if it's good riddance or if it's sad parting at sweet sorrow, well, then that's what it is. But you want to work with them as much as possible.
We just tell people, fine, you're on the hook until the place is re-rented.
That's the best process. Say, all right, you move out, we'll start the deposit process, but let you know you're paying rent until I re-rent it. That's the best practice by
That
far.
can only go so many days. It can't go for 6 months.
Well, it can go for 6 months if you're able to prove that you're doing everything reasonable to rent it.
Oh.
So you have to do what you can to re-rent it. And if you re-rent it in 3 days, then great. If it takes you 3 months to re-rent it, as long as you're doing everything that you normally do to re-rent it,
But that's only for the original lease.
only regional lease term. You can't go past the
Yeah,
end
you
of the
can't
lease.
add to it.
No, you can't add to it.
My experience has been, it's really hard to rent when tenants are still in there. So I tell them that as soon as they can leave, the better, because people can't visualize their furniture in a cluttered apartment.
Right.
And so it's best if they leave it empty so we can clean it, because it looks better when it's all cleaned up, and then, you know, people don't want to wait for them to have to move.
Right.
Yeah, it rents faster.
It does
Is
rent
that
faster.
what
Is that
most
everybody
people-
else's experience too? Rents faster empty?
Makes sense.
Depends on the resident.
It does depend on the resident. If they're really nice and clean and everything looks nice, then it may actually move faster that way too.
Yeah.
So it's worth considering both ways, but that's an important point. Thank you. So that's for those, yes.
Don't they lose their deposit if they break the lease?
Great question. Generally, it's best to not ever tell somebody that they lose their deposit, okay? Because that will make them mad, and it makes judges mad sometimes. So the best way is they have a fee that the deposit is applied to. So if they leave early, there's an early termination fee. If you want to build that into your lease, that's fine. You just want to be careful that it's not abusive or overwhelming amount. Also, you want to be careful that it protects you, because it costs you a lot more to lose a tenant in December than it does to lose a tenant in July, right? So it's best to have a flexible amount. And what I would do is I'd say, either you pay rent until the place leaves or re-rents, or I will work with you, and if you want to pay a deposit or a fee to get out of your lease, come negotiate with me. And then depending on the time of year, the condition of the apartment, etc., you're going to raise or lower that fee. Make sense?
So what would be a common, I mean, what would you say, like on a $1,200 house?
Anybody have any suggestions?
On a $700 apartment, I charge $100 for a premature turn.
Okay. I know a lot of people charge.
Because it cost me $200 to turn an apartment. I plan on doing that once a year.
Yeah.
So if they leave after 6 months, I charge $100.
Fair enough.
That's all?
If that's what you want to do. I know a lot of people will charge a month's rent as a thing on top of all the other rent that they owe you. Whatever you want to feel is fair.
But in a house, people generally are going to be more prosperous.
Yeah.
I deal with a lot of turnips.
A smaller apartment is lower rent, you're going to have more turnover. That's another issue. So, all right, all right, so here's a timeline. Oh,
Can I ask, could I just charge a month's rent, an extra month's rent?
sure. You build it into your lease, make sure you write it down, say that's what it is. Though I would personally, again, I would say leave it up to negotiation. So in December I would charge more, in July I would charge less. And whatever you expect your costs are. That's why it's important you monitor your costs. Know how much it does cost you to have a tenant move out. Know what you're expecting to lose because of this, and then charge them accordingly. And then if you do expect that it takes you 3 more weeks in December than it does in January, you charge that lost rent or whatever feels appropriate. Okay? Make sense? Everyone good? All right, so here is something that I worked on quite a bit to get set up. Please feel free to inject any other ideas you have in here as we go along. But here is a proposed timeline for the turnover. So 30 days plus before the tenant moves out, you get notice. Make sense? Oh, by the way, all of this is available on a handout, so you don't have to scribble too many notes. All of this information is on a handout in the back. If you are interested, you can grab that there or whatever you like. So, 30 days in advance as well. Marketing. Put your marketing in place early. Have your photos of the place stored where you can get to them. Know how you like to market. Is it digitally online? Is it in print? Boy, if it's in print, you want to get it out there as fast as possible, et cetera, et cetera. So know what your marketing plan is and put it into a place as soon as is reasonably possible. Generally, at least 30 days before vacancy. That way you start getting applicants, you start getting interest, things like that. 25 days out, schedule maintenance and upgrades. What do you guys usually do in between every tenant?
Clean the carpets.
Clean the carpets. Yeah, that's a huge one. Change the locks. That's another common one. Some people go through and they make sure to clean the walls, maybe repaint. Maybe you know you're going to be replacing the carpet. You know, the carpet's 8 years old, it's really beat up. When this tenant moves, I'm planning on replacing it. Well, this is the time to start thinking about when you're going to do that. Start scheduling it out before the tenant moves out. So that you know what you're planning on doing, you know what to do. And we'll talk more about what to do in a moment. About 3 weeks out is when I would start showing the apartment. So somebody said, it shows better empty, right? It does, often. But that doesn't mean that you can't start showing it full, right? So about 3 weeks out. Is that about everybody's experience, or do you usually wait longer? What do you do? John?
I often go earlier
Earlier, okay.
because there's a couple ways of people you get. Your out-of-towners will usually be over 30 days that they're looking. So I've gone to a 45 and I'm going to a 60-day notice period like in commercial places do. And I'll begin marketing that far out.
Wow.
That's for your out-of-towners. So I'll do a little taste piece and then just about 30 days in a week out, there's a burst of people that seem to look in anticipation of giving notice at their place. And then right after people give a 30-day notice, right at that point, there's a burst of activity.
Mm-hmm.
And then by about the middle of the month, it seems to go more quiet if you haven't already rented it. And then, of course, as you get close to the end of the month, it comes alive again with the last minute people.
Yeah.
But typically, I like to have it already rented somewhere by then when
And
the
that's-
30 days are.
John, the landlord. Yeah, that's exactly. If you can re-rent it earlier, that's fantastic. That's exactly how you should rent it, as early as possible. I said 21 days because that's about that peak, towards the beginning of the month. You have all those people who decided a week ago that they're moving and told their landlord, and then they've been starting to look. And this is about the time when, well, you're marketing it right when they're looking. And then they call you and they say, okay, I want to find a place. All right, now, about a week after that, that's when I'm starting to show the place. And that's when I'm like, okay, we are ready to show. So you communicate that to the tenant that currently is in there. I'm going to start showing the places. You have to have it clean. You have to have everything ready for me to start showing it then.
How can that happen when they got boxes all over, moving boxes? That doesn't work for us.
Right, it doesn't work for you. What? Anybody have any suggestions?
We just told the people if they want to see it, the same way you understand these people are moving out, you gotta look past the boxes.
That's great.
What if you're irritating the people in there who's trying to move and you want to get people in there and there's that tension between the people you want to show it to and the people in there, they're being annoyed?
Well, they have a duty under the lease and under the law to cooperate with you in re-renting the units.
What is the time frame? 24 hours?
You usually give them 24-hour notice. And that's why you would start going, okay, I'm going to start showing it on day 21, so on day 22 I'm going to give you a 24-hour notice. And on day 21, if I have appointments for day 20, you know. You want to set them out at least an appointment 24 hours notice in advance, so you can notify your current tenant 24 hours notice. That's generally best practice.
I was going to say, we, as soon as they give us notice, we talk to them and say, we'd like to show it. Do you want to be there? Are you okay if we go in without you being there and we'll let ourselves in? We can send you, usually they say, sure, just send me a text message.
The big thing you want to avoid is they were in the shower, they had no expectation, and that creates real awkwardness. So you want to give notice.
Yeah, but some may work, they may not be there, and that's fine with them if you have permission to go in there without their presence.
Yeah, yeah. As long as you explain to them what's going on, generally it's good.
Makes sense.
All right, day 21, as soon as you start showing, that's usually when you start beginning accepting applications. Although if somebody says, I saw the pictures online, I'm fine with it, then that. But that's generally when I say you start accepting applications, is when you start showing it again. Day 7 before move out, that's when I would do the walkthrough of the current tenants. Go through and say, okay, this is when we're doing your inspection to see what the property is like, and do it. I guess shaking head, what do you say?
They hide stuff.
They hide
have
stuff.
pictures over the walls that they've knocked holes in. They hide the carpet, they put their couch over a hole that's in the carpet. No, it doesn't work for me.
Okay.
So what do?
I wait till
You'll move the
it's out.
couches.
I wait till they're out.
Oh,
Then
then
I
you make
do
your
the
inspection.
Do you
Okay.
do it with the tenant?
Yes.
And you do it with it.
So this is what I generally call the walkthrough inspection here. I will do a final inspection after they move out, so I'll do both. So that I have this with them there, and that way if they want to claim any damage that they've done, tell me about it, then I give them the chance to be honest. And if they were hiding anything, after they move out, I come do through one just myself. And that's when I find those things.
They'll say, well, you didn't say anything when we had the walkthrough.
Well, they didn't say anything when they did the walkthrough with them, right? So you talk to them and you say, all right, I'm doing a walkthrough with you, but understand this is only a cursory thing. This is your opportunity to tell me about problems. And after you move out, that's my opportunity to tell you about anything else I found. Make sense? Is that good for everyone? So that's about a week before. I do it a week before because this gives them a good incentive to have everything cleaned up and ready to go by then.
Well, it's a good idea because you can, if they've ruined your carpet, you have a chance to go get some more
Yeah,
carpet.
and you get-
line it up.
You get a preliminary inspection. You want to do this earlier so that you know if there are any issues that are really serious to be taken care of. There's a hand right there.
The earlier that they give you notice, and the earlier that you first go into the place and first show it, I found. Sometimes you can skip the boxes so you get the tenant in there even before they start to make a mess, so it actually looks better. Plus you get a chance when you go in really early. I'll go in, 30 plus days before they're moving out. I already have an idea of what the place looks like and what it's going to be. So I can begin talking to them, well, you have this item that's a bigger repair than usual, or, oh, it's just the usual stuff and it's easy. And then there are no surprises. You also start the negotiations and things early, so every so often there's a tenant who doesn't want to cooperate, I can never make it available to show. Again, where I start that early, I find out that part that I'm facing early.
When you say that you already have an anticipation of what the unit is that because you've been doing quarterly inspections?
In theory, yes. I'm not always as good as I should be, but I make sure I have my leases end at the end of May, so I have a set time that they run through. And about 3 months in advance, I do an inspection, even if I haven't been doing my quarterly inspections, and offer them a new lease. So that's time for people to sign up, for me to get a feel of what's going on, and then we start this countdown. So we're 60 plus days out on this countdown.
And the further out you can get, the better.
Right.
And if the tenant knows, most of the time if it's a big serious reason that they know they're going to move, they're planning on going to graduate school in Germany or something like that. Hey, great, tell me as long in advance as possible so that we can get this going as far ahead as possible. Right? So, and then I would sign the lease 7+ days. I would probably as early as possible sign the lease with the new tenants moving in. I'll try to give you at least a week before the old tenants move out, but as early as possible. As soon as those new tenants have been approved, get them to sign the lease.
What do you do if the people aren't on schedule to move out when they're ready to move in?
Great question. That brings us in. Day 0, old tenant moves out, and now we go to days after. Day 0, old tenant moves out. Give yourself a couple days, right? Because you never know when that's going to be a problem, that they need an extra day, or they don't leave, or something like that. Give yourself at least 2 days. Why? Because that gives you time to serve an eviction notice. Say, hey, you were not complying with the lease, and usually they have agreed to move out by, again, the end of the month. So if they stay 1 extra day, they now owe you a whole extra month worth of rent because they stayed 1 extra day. Make sure they know that. Now you can waive that and use that as a negotiating tactic, but it's important.
Incentive to get them going.
It's incentive to get them going, right? So you get that, but also give yourself some time to finish required maintenance and upgrades. So you know what you're doing. Again, you've gone through, you've done inspections, so you know what's required. You know what you're going to do anyway, so you plan so you can use these days as effectively as possible. So like I said, 1 to 2 days is the minimum. I would give myself a little bit more time if you have more to do. But you schedule that out. That way the tenant knows this tenant's moving out on July 31st. This tenant, they can move in on August 5th or August 3rd or whatever the date is you decide. So that way there's a little gap for you to do things in.
Hate to go backwards, but I'm aware because of the classes that there can be some legal problems about who you rent to given the timeline. And some people call it a prejudice or something to rent to someone because they were there first. Do you remember some of that legal problems?
So you should you should rent to the person who's first, who's qualified.
To avoid that.
Yeah, so just do that and you're fine.
And you have 5 people and nobody's said yes they want it, so you do credit checks on all 5 and you pay for it or they pay for it?
They pay for it. And generally the best rule is you have 5 people apply, you go to the first one, you check them out, run the background check on them, and if they don't qualify, you go on to the second person and do that.
You don't do them all at once.
I usually wouldn't.
You do one at a time.
What do you guys do? Do you mostly do them all at once or all?
One at a time.
We do 1 at a time, and they got to step up and sign immediately, or the next person in line gets it. So if I know there are other people behind them, I'll give them as little as 2 hours. They come paper and give me money.
Oh, so you have a potential renter, it's the first one, you do your check. In doing that check, you find other people are as much interested as the guy you're doing the check on, and the guy is slow, the first one's slow, because you said, you gotta come and seal this up and whatever you tell them. And if they don't, then legally you can let them go and go on to the next one.
Right, I tell them I'll wait for nobody, so when I approve you, I will give you until,
Oh,
if I
once they're
approve you at 4
approved.
p.m. and I might give you until 8 p.m. to make good on that. 8:01, give the next person in line gets it again.
Oh.
So that I serve it first come, first serve.
Yeah, it makes
Follow the
sense
law.
how you've
But
done
I don't
it.
waste time, and I don't.
Yeah, that's my worry. How long am I on the stream with these people? I'm not. Once they're approved, they're approved. Now, do you want it, yes or no, give you a
And I
limited
give them in
time?
writing that they have an approval and they have until this time to make good on it, otherwise the next person in line has qualified.
And it's all in writing and you hand it to them? Once that credit check comes
I'll usually do it
back?
by text, because I think that's good.
Oh, yeah.
And that's good enough.
Thanks.
Usually the standard is 24 hours. You can go less if that's what you want to do.
I said, we just go with the first person who really says they'll do it, and money's what talks. First people with the money. It's not the first people that fill out an application.
Yes.
Because people will dawdle.
It's the first complete application,
So
which
you don't-
That includes money.
What
includes
about
the
the credit
application
check?
fee
Are you
and
always-
even maybe the deposit.
Are you always doing a credit check?
Yeah,
You're always doing that?
right.
So-
But for example, last night, someone gave us an application. They said they wanted it. We looked at the application and said, yeah, fine. Give us the money for the credit app and we'll do the deal. They didn't deposit money today. Someone else came along, so we rented it to the second party.
But it all swung on give us the money for the credit check. They did give you the money.
Even if they gave us money for the credit check, it's the first people with the deposit money.
Oh, the
That
deposit.
sign a contract. It's the first people with money that sign a contract. That's who we deal with.
makes
That's a
sense, though.
complete application. When they
Yeah.
sign the deposit agreement and do all that stuff,
Yeah.
that's how you want to do it, that's fantastic.
Then they don't dawdle nose and steer.
Well, if they do, yeah, I mean, yeah,
Time's money to us.
well, yeah.
So now we're just getting, last thing on this is 30 days after the old tenant moves out, you give the old tenant their disposition of deposit. Okay? So that's the basic principle on that. Just a couple of things, maintenance, repairs, and upgrades that you do in between the tenants. First, the basic ones, cleaning, changing locks. We already discussed that. Other things, you're going to look at repairs. They're going to generally fall into these categories. Minor cosmetic repairs. Those usually don't matter, right? They're usually things you can put off for a long time. But maybe now, especially if you don't have a tenant, that's a time to rush those. So as soon as the place is empty, that's a good time to get those taken care of very quickly. So you want to know what they are, and you've got good records on that. Major repairs, either discovered on move out or whatever, you want to know about that. You want to schedule time for that. And the major repairs, waiting until vacancy. So big things like you know you're going to replace the carpet. Schedule those well enough in advance. The last, upgrades. If you're upgrading anything, painting, anything else, make sure you schedule time for that. You know that you're planning on doing that. So 5 things, 5 suggestions for renting your units faster. Number 1, know what's going on with your tenants. Know in advance if they're planning on staying. Know in advance if they're planning on moving. Know in advance if they have no idea what they have in their mind yet. Okay? Number 2, plan ahead. Make sure you have all your documents available. Make sure that you don't have to go, oh shoot, where is that move out form and all those things. Dig up well in advance, get all of your paperwork in a row so that you have everything. Make sure your marketing materials are formatted and ready to go so you have your photographs of the apartment, all of that stuff ready. Decide early if you're going to be changing the rent or making upgrades to the property. If you're going to be changing the rent, you don't want to be like, oh shoot, when did I decide? So know about that well in advance. 3, keep the unit in good repair so you don't have to do tons of repairs in between tenants or tons of repairs to try to make it look nicer in order to re-rent it. And maintain the curb appeal of your exteriors. Don't let it just kind of fall apart because you have a tenant in there just to find out, oh shoot, now I need to do all this stuff to make it look nicer so that I can re-rent it. Number 4, begin marketing earlier. Have everything ready to go and evaluate applicants as quickly as possible. Just start that process as early as possible. As soon as you know that the tenant's moving out, that's when I would begin marketing.
Taylor?
Yeah.
You back up one. The repair and deduct option from their security deposit, is that part of the lease that we're using now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, the repair and deduct means that if they do damage to your place, you take it out of their deposit, the money out of their deposit to fix it. And then they have to refill their deposit next time they pay rent. If they don't refill, or if they give you just money for the rent, it goes first to refilling the deposit, and then what's left goes for the rent, and now they're late on the rent. That's how our lease is written. It's important because it gives you the opportunity and ability to ensure that the place is in good condition at all times.
Does anybody do that in here? Do you?
Yeah.
You find that it works?
Yes. Yeah.
You got to stay with it, I'm sure, it's
Right.
with some people.
Someone had a washing machine upstairs that leaked water, $500 damage downstairs. Now, they didn't have $500 in their pocket, so they just paid $100 a month for extra. We're
Okay.
fine with that. But, yeah, if you don't do that, the deposit's not big enough to cover everything.
No,
Did they have renter's insurance that would have covered that?
Renter's insurance would cover it. We don't require insurance.
But if they had it, it would cover that.
You're in a lower income bracket then, aren't you, on your units?
We rent our 2 bedrooms for $750 to $8, and the 3 bedrooms for about $9.
Oh, so your market,
Yeah.
except for the fancy places. Okay.
Yeah.
I only do single family homes, so I have no idea on your market.
Why don't you have renter's insurance a requirement?
It's just I think it's a waste of money. Why force a resident to waste money? That's a personal opinion.
Because it's not that often used, or?
I've never required it. It just seems to me like it's rather expensive. Frankly, the deposits generally cover 90% of the problems. And for the people that cause large problems, I doubt.
You don't want them anyway, regardless. They
Right.
wouldn't even keep up on their renter's insurance, they'd let it go.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Do you
the
require
lingers-
But I don't
Do you
know,
require
John, You required renter's insurance?
They come with it, some of them come with it.
Yeah,
So
so
put the owner's name on it?
everyone manages differently.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this type of class, is it's an opportunity to talk to other people, see how they run
Require the
it.
owner's name as an additional insured
And
on
some
the.
come with it, some don't,
Okay,
I
that's what
understand.
So,
Because I'm more concerned, I'm not concerned with the $500 damage. I'm concerned with something more catastrophic that goes wrong.
Yeah, like the pipe was broke and they were gone for the week. Yeah, okay.
And that's why you want renter's insurance, because it will cover a couple $1,000.
I think we take at least 300,000 liability, and then, whatever they cover for their own stuff. And it costs them $12 a month, so.
Yeah, it's actually cheap.
Well, you really have nice property.
so again, once again, this is why I love these classes, because you meet people, you see what they're doing, and you decide, does that work for me or not? And it's a great opportunity. We don't all have to do the same thing, because if we did, not only would it be boring, it wouldn't work for everybody's situation.
No, but
So it's
it's
great
better to learn up front than hindsight.
And it's good to learn from each other's experience. Last tip, don't move too quickly or act too desperate. Make sure you follow your processes and procedures for tenant screening. Shortcuts are costly, and it's not worth taking them. And make sure you allow a few days between the move in and move out, just in case. So those are my recommendations for that. And now, I'm going to turn time over to Micah, because she's been very patient with us. This is again Micah, who had provided the snacks and is our presenter today. So I appreciate it.
Does everyone have our handout?
No, there's the second one here with that one. You
I
got
got
it.
it, I got it, thank you.
So there's an application along with the first page.
And there's one over there.
Oh. One in there. Okay, so just briefly wanted to talk to you guys about our program. Again, I'm from Salt Lake County and I work in their Lead Safe Housing Program. So just quickly, who we are, it's a federally funded grant program. We've been around for about 15 years. Each grant goes for a 3-year cycle, so we're on our 5th cycle right now. Each cycle we go into about 250 to 300 homes and test them for lead-based paint and then remediate if it is found, free of charge to the family or the tenant who is living there. The purpose of the grant is to, of course, try and reduce childhood lead poisoning in Salt Lake County. And actually with this particular 3-year grant cycle, we wrote into the grant that we wanted to do more multifamily rental properties, because in the past we've done mostly just single family home owners, not necessarily people who are renting. And we wanted people who are renting to have the same opportunity to have their homes tested. And just the biggest barrier we've come up against is people who are renting, they don't really care. They're like, I'm gonna be here for 6 months, then I'll be gone. So we've really been trying to push to contact the people who are managing the properties, because we figured they would care more about the safety of their property and make sure that their tenants are living in a safe environment. So as far as exactly what we do, we pay a risk assessor to go in and actually test the property to see where there's lead-based paint. They test the interior, exterior, window panes, door panes, and then they'll ship those tests off to the lab and see, have them analyze the results and see where lead is found, and then they'll send those results back to us. Our project manager will write up a scope of work and say, okay, then they'll bring in the property manager or the family and say, this is what we found, this is what we're gonna fix, and this is how much it's gonna cost. Typically on one unit, we'll spend between $4,000 and $6,000. A lot of times if we're painting the entire exterior, it's more than that, but we have multiple programs that we can pull additional money from if we need to. There's lots of projects on the board right now where we're spending upwards of $12,000 to $20,000 on a single project. So it's a pretty cool program. how someone would qualify for the program is first, the property does have to be built prior to 1978, and then it is based on income. So for a rental property, it does get a little complicated, but I've listed it out between these purple brackets. I'll just kind of walk you through what the income would need to be below for them to qualify. So your tenants, if you have a fourplex or less units, then 50% of the households would have to be 50% or at or below 50% of the area median income, and then the remaining 50% will be at 80% or below. And then I listed out the chart right here with the values of that 80% and 50% adjusted for family size. And then if there's 5 or more units, then 50% of the households have to be at or below 50% of the area median income, and 30% have to be at or below 80%. And then the remaining 20% of your tenants can have any income. And then the last qualification is that there has to be children under the age of 6 living in or frequently visiting the property. With rentals, we understand that people are constantly coming in and out, so while there might not be a child in that unit currently, there could be, 6 months down the road. So how we've adjusted for that requirement is we only require that you can show that 25% of your units have a child currently living there or frequently visiting. And if there is, you can prove that there's 25% of the units that have that child there, then we're eligible to do all of your units, with the understanding that there could be a child in those other units in the future. So essentially that's our program. That's the gist of it. Sorry to be brief. Does anyone have questions for me?
You can get a little lead test at Sherwin-Williams. Do those things really work?
Yeah, so they work, but you're only testing, one area of your home, where there can, that could have been painted a few years ago, but then your back porch or that old window attached to your garage, could have lead paint there. So.
What sort of liability does the landlord have, or the owner of the property have, if, say, they don't qualify for this program, but they figure lead is there any sort of liability associated with that?
I'm not 100% sure on that.
I know
Well,
as a
now
broker,
you know.
if they test your property, and now you've got information that there is lead on that property, you would need to just do the disclosure to
This
the
is
tenant.
disclosure.
Yes, I have this information, it's available, or you have to give it to them. And I think you've covered yourself at
It
that
should be
point.
given in the lead disclosure if you're probably private anyway.
Just the other, so.
I've
Right.
seen
The difference
in,
is you'll be telling people, yes, we know this way, but.
yeah, most people just disclose in their lease if it is built before 78. Hey, look, because it's same with, any realtor. If you buy a house, you have to say, look, it's built before 78, there could be lead paint here.
That and give them the lead-based
Yeah,
paint
a
booklet.
booklet, so they're aware.
But it's a free paint job if you.
Exactly, if you qualify. it
So
should
all
work.
he's doing, Mike, is just burying the lead paint then.
So it is, we're containing it, just because there really is no way to completely remediate it. You contain it by repainting, essentially, and then it's considered lead safe through our program for 20 years.
We figure we've gotten rid of any problems because we've changed all the sheetrock, all the windows, and it's brick exterior.
Yep, so most
Do we
people
need
who
to
have
still-
who have updated and things like that, usually they're fine. We find the most properties that have lead paint in them still have the original wood pane windows. Any original feature to the house is where we usually find lead-based paint.
Do we need to give them, in that case, do we need to give them
I would still, just to be
lead-based
safe,
paint?
say, this is built before 78, we don't think there is, but there's a possibility, and here's how you keep your
So
family
you
safe.
still give them that?
I would.
Did you have a question?
You answered.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, I did give each of you an application, so if you know if your property would qualify or maybe someone else you know, I would encourage you guys to apply for a program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Micah. And it really is a great idea if you think about it, because at the very least, you now have the opportunity to tell your applicants as a marketing thing, hey, look, I've had this tested and it's no lead. Or I've had this tested and fixed. And it's a great way of, if nothing else, just telling them, I've taken care of this. So it's really a great program. I would consider at least testing if you're interested. So roof maintenance in the last 20 minutes or so that we are here. First thing we want to talk about is understanding your roof. Different terminology and some of the things that are involved. First, the ridge line is what the reference is. I'm sure most of you know this, but I'm just going through for everyone because I didn't know all of these. A place on the roof like this is called a valley. You can see why, but where it runs down like that, it's called a valley. And you have hips, which are the areas on the side, go figure. And then the big one, flashing, which is the metal points around where it wraps around different features that stick out of the roof. So let's talk about maintenance for these areas. First, for valleys, make sure that the valley is clear of debris and garbage that can build up and that can cause all kinds of problems. If you have a very shallow valley, it can attract leaves, like you can see here. It can get all kinds of other things. Has anybody ever had a problem with property where something like this has happened? What happened?
Well, we didn't even realize that the way the porch was connected to the house, there was a valley. And of course, we found out because it came through.
Right.
And then we made sure when they re-roofed it that that had special attention.
Exactly. And any change in the pitch, so sometimes you don't know it's there because you just glance at it, but if it goes like this and then goes slightly less steep, that creates a valley,
That's right.
and that can be a serious problem.
And you can't catch it from looking up.
Right. So you have to actually get on the roof. If you've never been on the roof of your rental properties or had somebody else go up there, you might want to consider it. I wouldn't buy a property without, I found that out the hard way. Next one, seasonally clean out your rain gutters. These can build up with water, cause leaks, floods, issues like this. Ice flow backwards. So sometimes you get a lot of stuff in there. That means the water builds up there in the winter. It can build up ice, and as the water expands, it can push back underneath these tiles, and it can go quite a ways up the roof, causing all kinds of messes for you later on, including prying up the shingles, which I found fascinating. I never knew that before researching for this class. So it can actually pry up the shingles so that when the melts, it pops back down, but now all the nails have popped out and the whole thing just slides right off. So you want to be careful about making sure that you have good drainage off of your sides. Flashing. This is one of the #1 problems people have, and it's really unfortunate because this is one of the easiest ways that landlords can get taken advantage of by unscrupulous maintenance workers. They come in and they see something like this and they say you need to repair your whole roof. Strip everything off, we've got to do it all from scratch. How many of you have heard something like that from any other, whatever the kind is? I've heard something where you're like, does this match the smell test? Right? Paul was talking to me about this class, and he told me a story about he had a rental unit where he had a really old, weird, fashion style of lighting, and I don't remember what it's called, but where you flip the switch and the switch doesn't conduct the electricity, it sends a little signal to something else that flips on the switch. It's built in the 60s, it was state of the art, then it never really adopted. Anyway, he had a problem where a short in one little part caused all the lights to go out. And the electrician came in, looked at it, and said, you got to replace the whole thing. Thousands of dollars to replace the entire electrical system. That's just weird to me that something so small would do that. So I went to somebody else and they said, no, that's a $25 part and probably 3 hours of labor. So make sure that things pass the smell test when it comes to repairs, right? That you understand, if you have something like this, there are ways to fix it. Caulk, it's really good at patching these types of holes. It's often used by the professionals, they use like a serious tar, but it's the same stuff they use in the bathtub. You can go ahead and use it there. It won't look as pretty because it'll be bright white for a while, but it will waterproof. That's what it's designed to do. Okay? So that's the big super tip for tonight is caulk is a good tool for things like that.
Buy clear.
You can buy clear.
Stupid clear stuff.
Yeah. Other things, patching. You can patch. Sometimes you'll have a professional come out and look at your roof and say, well, you really ought to replace it. Say, okay, well, why? They say, well, they'll give you all the explanations, and there are reasons to replace it and times to do so. But there are also times where you might want to say, well, what if I just patch it? They say, well, I wouldn't recommend it because you're going to end up replacing the whole thing in 6 months anyway. And you look at your calendar and you say, I'll have a lot more money in 6 months, if I save up for this. So yeah, let's patch it for now and let's limp through. That's not necessarily the same thing as a homeowner, because you look at the property different as a landlord. You need to ensure that you're getting the cash flow in order to make these fixes. There is no cash flow for a homeowner that's living there. They make their decisions on a different basis, so it's important that you realize that. When it comes to the flashing itself, rusting is often the issue. Make sure you check every couple of years for repair and replacement. Make sure you're doing inspections up on the roof. You should do quarterly inspections anyway, but you want to do a roof inspection at least every couple of years, and especially if something like this, it may not be readily visible. It's amazing to me how long sometimes people will go without getting on the roof and then realizing, oh, wow, I haven't been up there for 10 years, of course it's deteriorating. Make sure that shingles are in good repair and that none are missing. Replace shingles immediately or call an associate member that does. We have lists of repairmen. In fact, I think that's coming up soon. Get it repaired quickly. You'll save yourself issues, time, money. Don't go the other extreme of saying, well, I'll fix it later, I'll fix it later. Paul told me another story where he had a little leak drip, drip, drip through into a tenant's bedroom. He said, okay, fine, I'll come get it. And then a rainstorm happened, and that drip, drip, drip turned into a big flood that took the whole drywall off the top of the bedroom and put it on the floor. Yeah, so go try to save so much money that you end up costing yourself more money, right? So there's two sides of this coin. You want to balance it one way and the other. All right, so some tips for locating a leak. If you suspect a leak for whatever reason, or you just want to do a thorough inspection, there are a couple of ways you can do it. First, check out in the attic, see if there's wet insulation or something like that. That insulation absorbs water or holds water pretty well, so even a few weeks after a storm, you get up there, you might even find wet insulation, so that's a great sign to look for. And then be aware, if you find water dripping down, that doesn't mean that where the drip is where the hole is. It can be way up the roof, dripping through the shingles, and then traveling down a ways to where it drips. So before you rip up right there, make sure you start looking at where you are and what's going on. Okay. Best time to check is after, towards the end of a rainstorm. Hey, if nature's helping you out. If not, you can create your own rainstorm by putting the hose up on top, spraying the roof pretty good with some water, and then seeing where it leaks. Okay? And then if you're still unable to find the leak, check the outside of the roof for damage thoroughly. We already talked about water testing. One person goes in the attic, one person goes upstairs. This is more, instead of just spraying the whole roof, you have somebody with a hose and they do a specific spot, test it, do another spot, test it, and you have somebody underneath, walkie-talkies knocking, however you want to communicate where you check.
We didn't know when the roof comes exactly to the house edge. There's a huge opportunity for water at that end to get in. You really want, we actually had to put in a 2-foot eaves over it.
Oh, yeah.
The only way we could correct water coming in.
So it's interesting, it came straight down like this?
Yeah.
Where it dripped, oh yeah, that's
Well, it
it.
wasn't even that steep, it was almost flat. And yet it still got into that thing. And it was hard. We thought it was coming through the windows, we thought a lot of things. But in the end, we had a man come up and said, no, look where the roof is, the end of the wall there. And you've got to have 2 feet out because of the way the roof slopes.
And because the water will come. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to recognize that and realize what's going on. If you have an unusual roof, you might want to go read about it.
Yeah, and people were saying so many different things, we didn't know who to believe. And we were paying people to take a window out. Didn't need any, had nothing to do with the window, the ceiling of the window, nothing to do with that, was coming from the roof. We didn't know, have a new window for no reason.
That's fun. And then when it comes to repairing the leaks, roof patches called larger leaks may be temporarily solved by sliding a sheet of metal under the damaged shingle to help mediate the damage. For long-term solutions, recommend that you use a roofing company to come in and redo it or to patch it yourself if you feel comfortable doing so. Okay? And you want to look at where the damage is. My house at home right now, I have a few shingles that are missing from a recent storm, but they're on the eaves overhanging the garage. So I'm not as concerned about getting that fixed as I would be if it was right over my bedroom, right? That's just the nature of the beast and figuring things out. What you want to avoid is that, happening at your morning breakfast. And here are some roofing companies that we know of. So just if you are taking notes, these are 4 members of the association who do a fantastic job. We could highly recommend them. So if you are looking for a roofing company, you can get their information off of our website on our products and services guide. They do a great job.
I highly recommend those kind of folks. We bought a building a few years ago, it was 10 years old. The roof had a half dozen leaks, even though it was 10 years old. And so we just paid to have the roof patched. And now we have to replace some siding now also. Whoever installed the roof didn't do it correctly. And it damaged not only the roof, but the siding. Now as we replace the siding, we see it's rotted out also. The sheathing on the building. It pays to do business with folks that know their business.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Do you happen to know, do these guys do, any of these guys do soffits or
The fascia, the underneath side?
Yeah, all that. Yeah.
I'm not sure. You can call and ask. I know our directory our current 2015 directory does have a section that's soft fascia. So we can see if they're in the same one.
Well, while you're talking about that, if you have a vinyl roof and there's nothing stopping it, and the vinyl roof comes over the garage, and where you go into the garage, you go up the steps, it's dangerous. We've had several people look at it, but because the roof and the ceiling is 6 inches between the roof and inside the house, when you install those, I don't know, they're metal things that you can put in the roof, it cannot hold, and it's going to damage. And who do you call? What do you do? The snow and ice is sliding off. We have to correct it, but we don't know who can put something up there without damaging.
Right.
Yeah.
There may be solutions.
Call one of those people.
Call one of these companies.
They
Ask
deal with vinyl as well.
If the nice things about members of these are all members of the association. Call them. If they don't do it, they know their industry well, which means they'll be able to tell you.
Yeah. Trust them.
And then they can recommend you other people if they can say, we don't do that with this company.
Yeah.
I'd call them.
Fair enough.
So they're generally really good about referring to each other if they don't.
Do you have a preference?
I don't.
For one more for asphalt, one more for metal, one more for vinyl?
I don't really know on that, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
No problem. Well, that's it for tonight. We are ending 2 minutes early, so I'll take any questions that you might have. And other than that, I'll just stay up here, and you guys are welcome to take an extra sandwich, take an extra cookie, and a soda. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.